God is dead, he remains dead, and we have killed him. This quote by Friedrich Nietzsche is both powerful and controversial. In this documentary, we will take a closer look at its meaning and how it has defined Nietzsche as a philosopher. But first, who is Friedrich Nietzsche? Nietzsche was a German philosopher born on October 15, 1844, and died on August 25, 1900. He attended the University of Bonn in Germany to study theology and classic philology, and upon his graduation became a professor. One of his noble actions in this role was a vote to allow women admission into the university. He was the only one out of four to vote in favor. However, the motion did not pass. Only after a few years, he fell seriously ill, half-blind, and was practically always in pain, leading to a decade of isolation and creativity. He wrote many books in this time, notably Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Ecce Homo, Beyond Good and Evil, and On the Genealogies of Morals. Later, in January of 1889, Nietzsche collapsed in the streets of Turin. He lost all control of his mind and spent the next 11 years of his life in an asylum with complete mental darkness. He died in 1900 of syphilis. Today and throughout history, Friedrich Nietzsche's work has greatly influenced theologians, psychologists, philosophers, writers, and many others in their work to understand the motives behind Western religion, philosophy, and morality. Because of his intriguing thought process and keen observation of human nature, many people who do not enjoy philosophy have found Nietzsche to be of great interest. One Oxford academic author called Nietzsche an erratic thinker of immature thought, saying that he does not appeal to the intellect, but to the sentiment, to the passion, to our ambition, to our vanity, all which is human. According to George Hahn, an English professor at Townsend State, Nietzsche gets hit with everything from nutcase to Nazi. In addition, his story has become a cautionary tale to many philosophers throughout time. This is because after his death, Nietzsche's sister Elizabeth took over his estate, which included all of his writings. She then edited them to suit her own views, which were fascist and anti-Semitic, and published them under Nietzsche's names. Because of this, people tend to see him as a Nazi. This was not only a misconception about him, but her actions taught other philosophers over time to guard their works, so as to prevent anyone from manipulating them. As you can see, his impact on history is not only apparent, but there's much more to his life story than meets the eye. From his sister's modification of his words and changing them to fascist views, to modern readers finding his words diverse and relatable, Nietzsche's impact has spanned across many generations and thought processes. Moreover, all of these things lead to a philosophy scholar saying the number of misconceptions of Nietzsche is appalling. Throughout his 56 years, he shared many radical ideas, living many debates over what he really thought. One such debate that I'll be talking about is whether or not Nietzsche was a nihilist. To understand the idea of nihilism, one must first open their mind to both its simplicity and its complexity. In simple terms, a nihilist is someone who doesn't believe in any meaning to life, but the complex side is radical and often viewed as pessimism. A nihilist believes that all values are baseless, and that there's nothing that can be defined as meaning, rejecting all moral and religious principles. If a person subscribes to nihilism, he or she would believe in nothing. This person would have no loyalties or purpose. Looking back at the aforementioned quote by Nietzsche, God is dead, he remains dead, and we have killed him, we can only assume that Nietzsche is in fact a nihilist, because of his lack of loyalty to a higher power. But was he? We will see the truth behind Nietzsche's philosophy and why he does not in fact subscribe to the ideas of nihilism. One of Nietzsche's most important books, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, tells the story of Zarathustra, but a new Zarathustra, the Iranian prophet who influenced Judeo-Christian beliefs and who, in Nietzsche's fictional version, was fit to preach the bringing down of the dualistic beliefs that he helped create. The book starts by introducing Zarathustra, who has been living in the mountains for 10 years. After he comes down, Zarathustra starts preaching the Overman, or in German, the Übermensch. The Overman is an idea Nietzsche coined, and it described for him the perfect person. This person would rise above traditional beliefs and create their beliefs without need for traditional Judeo-Christian beliefs. Man is something to overcome. Man is a rope stretched between animal and overman, a rope over an abyss. This quote from Thus Spoke Zarathustra demonstrates that Nietzsche didn't see humanity as being complete. Rather, he thought of people being on a path walking towards the overman. Nietzsche put down an example for this, saying that we are like a tightrope walker over an abyss. We are balancing on a path from animal to overman. But how does this relate to people thinking he is a nihilist? On the path to becoming the overman, nihilism is an inevitable part of the journey. Just because it is a part of the path, that does not mean he believed in nihilistic views. He did, however, believe that humanity would lose traditional beliefs and transition to a nihilistic ideology. Because of this new belief in nothing, it would leave people distraught. So as a solution, he thought up the idea of the overman. one who is like a nihilist in the sense that there is no correct meaning to life. However, contrasted from nihilism, they don't believe in anything, literally, but the key difference is that they don't throw away the idea of giving life meaning. Instead of having a set meaning to life, whether that be to get into a place after death or something else, they create their own meaning. So overall, nihilism and Gnosticism confused with the idea of the overman because they both don't believe in an objective meaning to life, but they do, however, have a meaning to life. Because Nietzsche used the term nihilism and introduced the idea that nihilism is one of the most important things in humanity, many became confused and figured he was talking about how nihilism is the end goal. Because the overman is so similar to a nihilist. To put it into perspective, Nietzsche described nihilism as part of a path similarly to how being a child is part of growing up. Another one of Nietzsche's writings, The Parable of the Madman, is a short story widely known when talking about the death of God. That's another example of why many believe Nietzsche to be nihilistic. To summarize, it tells of a madman who cries out to a town of atheists yelling, "God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him." In this story, Nietzsche claims that the people committed the heinous crime of killing God, yet they have no idea how they have done this. There's no physical act, so how could this be possible? This is because when he talks about the murder, he's speaking in a metaphorical sense. Or in other words, Nietzsche is saying that the belief in Judeo-Christian tradition as a whole is dying out.
He wanted us to understand that there was no transcendent source of values, and that we had to determine our own.
This quote by Les Miller, an associate professor of philosophy at Colorado Mesa University, substantiates that Nietzsche was not a nihilist. In fact, Miller points out that Nietzsche believed above all else that we need to create our own values and not be influenced by something or someone telling us what our values should be. Nietzsche described the Judeo-Christian tradition as devious. However, according to Miller, his reasons for feeling this negativity come from the life he was living.
The way he describes it comes from his own affinity for certain virtues: strength, nobility, heroism, fortitude, sorts of things he actually didn't really have in life, being so sickly. So he saw Christianity as turning those virtues into vices, and turning the vices of meekness and so on into virtues.
It doesn't mean Nietzsche is claiming that Christianity wasn't true. He just did not agree with the values and so described it as devious and the opposite of what Roman paganism believed. This ultimately would leave the world believing he was a nihilist, but in reality, he simply wanted the people to establish their values independently without influence from the Judeo-Christian beliefs that he found to be devious. In summary, Nietzsche had many ideas that don't lean far off the path of nihilism. However, that does not mean he was a nihilist. His influential ideas are often misconceived as being nihilistic because of his highly controversial statement, "God is dead," a phrase demonstrating the loss of traditional beliefs, rather than the common misconception of physical death. In addition, the Overman, the perfect person, highly resembles the traits of a nihilistic person, but differs in that an Overman has a need to create meaning where a nihilist does not. Lastly, in Nietzsche's writings, namely Parable of the Madman and Thus Spoke Zarathustra, introduce ideas that can be confused with nihilism, such as the death of God. Because this statement is often misunderstood as a literal God dying, in Nietzsche's example, the death of God is merely talking about the loss of belief in God. These differences, as well as a testimony from Dr. Les Miller, professor of philosophy, fully proves the claim that Nietzsche as a nihilist is a misconception.